My name's Harry. I work with Fanny Lakoubay at LAL Art Advisory. And I forgot to mention to you guys last time, but I also work at the Blockchain Art Directory, which is a massive directory for all things notable in Web3 and NFTs. But so last week I explained just the basic premise of the crypto art critique. Basically, we've been doing this for the last two cohort sessions, Boya. Like, I feel like it's maybe more.
I think we can start.
Cool. But I think everyone who's taken part in these critiques over the past year, essentially, have really benefited and enjoyed each other's feedback. The artworks that are presented in these critiques don't have to be the finished article at all. They can be like an early sketch or a halfway draft, or they could be minted. It's really up to you what you'd like to show in these sessions. I'm delighted to present them. It's a real honor to do this on a near weekly basis, and the actual structure of each person's critique goes as follows. So you send me either an artwork in my DMs or in the voice chat. It doesn't particularly matter. And then as the artist, you would just mute yourself for about 5 minutes whilst the cohort takes a few notes about what we see and try to understand the iconography of your work. And then after those 5 minutes are up, we as your audience come in and just talk about what we're seeing, and any symbolism or nuances that we see, we exchange with each other. And then finally, for the last 3 or 4 minutes, you as the artist come in and just explain your intentions. It just works like that. And you don't need to have your mic on at all or your camera. It's totally cool if you'd prefer to type it up in the chat. Very open to any kind of engagement like that. So that's the spiel. I think we should start with Christian, because the man is up at 3 a.m. and it's very commendable. If that's all right with you, Christian? I think.
Sure. I don't mind starting. I am trying to upload a file, and I don't think I can. Is it possible for me to email it to you, Harry? And have you uploaded it?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Totally.
I'm going to have to ask you, though, for an email address. Do you mind?
Not at all. Not at all.
If you don't mind putting it in the message box, I'll promptly email you, and perhaps I'll defer to somebody else while I undertake that bit of logistics.
Yeah, totally.
All right, so give me 30 seconds to catch up with you, and if there's somebody else who'd like to precede me, feel free to volunteer.
So I think I might pick, because Alejandro was so kind to send his artwork just for the call. If that's all right, man.
And could I ask?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mine is a video. Should I be sending it to you as an email as well, or should I place a link just so that I can also prepare? Because in my
Sure.
Yeah.
A link would probably be best, but if you want to send it directly, that's also cool.
Okay, I'll try a link. That should be easy. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, Martha. All right, so I'll just get the artwork up, Alex, and we can talk about it. Just a second here. All right. So I had a quick glance at the artwork description before we started, but I think it'd be good just to see the artwork isolated first, and then we'll be able to think about what we're seeing. Maybe I can hint at the title first. It's Zeus and Ganymede on a VR date. So can you guys see the screen okay? Okay, I'm going to take that as a Cool. That's a yes. Lovely. All right. So 5 minutes just observing Alex's artwork, what it might mean, starting now. Okay. So does anyone have any initial thoughts about this really, really cool piece? If not, I can chip in. So I didn't listen too much to Latin when I was at high school, so I had to do a quick Google search. But I know about I know about Zeus, but I wasn't too sure on Ganymede, and this I believe is a reference to Zeus and Ganymede going out, shall we say, in mythology. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I can be wrong at times. But I see this as a kind of reinterpretation of that mythology in the 21st century context. When you think of like VR dating, it's like a merger of those two timelines. I think that's pretty evident with the reference to Oculus here, and I think through like the materiality of this one, like the grain and the distortion. I think of internet aesthetics like atypical ones like synthwave and vaporwave. Someone had to say it, and just how relationships seem to adapt over time. I suppose that's the impression that I'm getting. But yeah. Does anyone else have any ideas? I know I'm grateful that the artwork was put in the chat. Actually, that's really useful here.
The image appears to be a collage too of actual photographs of statuary. I don't know if they're actually generated or drawn, but I think they may be derived from actual statuary, and as a consequence, it's a kind of collage of those references or allusions to Greek statuary. I think it's interesting that the heads are missing, that all the other component parts of the body are there, and that Ganymede seems to have one extra hand. I think, unless there's a second personality clutching the leg. The original myth portrays Ganymede as the cupbearer to Zeus, who shows up, of course, to pour liquor and wine and mead for the god. And I presume if it's a cyber date, there would be a kind of mutual wearing of goggles. I don't know, like they would both be in costume. I'd like to be able to track down the illusions, though, to actually find the original statuary, because I presume that there must be some import or significance to the mixture of parts of the marble.
Yeah, totally. Sorry, go on.
Oh, Chris. I mean, Harry, go ahead. I had to add a little something after that.
Sure. Yeah, I agree, Christian. I'd like to know the origin of where these came from. They make me think of the busts you might see in Florence. Yeah, that was what I was going to say, Martha.
Yeah, I guess I also wanted to follow Christian, because I also observed the illusion of casted body parts, like sculptures of stone, but are now paper thin, suspended, and there's hands holding them in place. It's a kind of discombobulated body part sculpture in virtual reality. Those were my observations. But yeah, this idea too of it being referencing something heavy and stone, but it's now paper thin and suspended.
I'll hop in here too. First I want to say I generally love the crypto art narratives that speak to this relationship between the human and the divine. I love that kind of mythos, but specifically in how the separation between the exiled and the exalted is examined, right? And I think the Zeus and Ganymede relationship is actually a really, really fascinating one in mythology, and just this idea that the gods being so enamored by the human youth's beauty that Ganymede would be worth abducting and bringing into the world of the gods. And I think what's really powerful in this piece is the metaphor of the VR world. And it's a really strong metaphor. And what I see in this artwork is the separation of the two figures. That it seems that Zeus is still central, and he's the one that's wearing the headset. But what's interesting is that Ganymede is physically present and adjacent to Zeus, but he's still essentially in a separate world. And I think the disembodiment of the figures suggests that this boundary also speaks to me of our own disorientation between the digital and the physical worlds. There's still so much that I want to just kind of dive into and stare at this piece for another hour, but that's kind of my first read.
That's excellent, Connie. Thank you so much. Alex, would you like to step in here? And I feel like Connie was pretty on point with that, as was everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really happy to hear your opinions on the piece. It's actually a new piece that I just minted today, so it's really cool to get direct feedback from people. So I'm actually working on a book that I want to self-publish about the myth of Ganymede and Zeus, and also understanding Ganymede as the moon of Jupiter and all these iconography that comes from planets and moons and science fiction, time travels, and mixed with classical Greek culture and so forth. So that's something I really dig, and I'm exploring all that mythos to build the images, the vocabulary for that book, and that's one of the images. And one of the fascinating things about this classical myth, the fact that Zeus fell completely in love with Ganymede from looking at him from Mount Olympus when he was looking for a new cupbearer to replace his daughter, who was very clumsy and was dismissed because she couldn't undertake the job of serving nectar and ambrosia to the gods. So he fell in love with him, and then he decided just to go down and kidnap him, abduct him, and bring him back to Mount Olympus and make him immortal and make him his lover. And there is many things I'm interested about this myth. One fact is that he had the power to go down and kidnap a teenager. And how do we read nowadays a sexual intercourse between a grown-up and a teenager, which is forced and not accepted by the second part, and he's a minor? And that's something I'm interested that how do we revisit myths in different contexts, cultural contexts, and things that were acceptable are not anymore right now. And a part of that, rereading myths and rereading our own culture in different time frames is in the piece as well, in the fact that the myth was passed through orally for many centuries, and then at some point in time by Homer in the form of a poem was written down. But then later on, it was re-represented in sculptures, and this is two sets of sculpture. The Zeus one is in Fuente Navona in Rome, so it's a sculpture of the 17th century by Bernini. And then the sculpture of Ganymede is actually a sculpture by Pierre Julien. It's a French sculpture, also neoclassical of the 17th century, and the piece actually in the museum Louvre in Paris. And it's interesting to me that they were trying to recreate this classical aesthetics and how we saw the world back in the day. But then they are modern sculptures. And then another interesting thing is that the myth is really explicit about their sexual relationships. But then in the sculptural representations, they are never together. There is always Ganymede with the eagle or Zeus, but they are never having sex or seen together or represented together. So I wanted to collage them together. And I was imagining how would it be if Zeus would have been able to date him, VR or a cyber date or something, him before even going down and kidnapping him. And this idea of revisiting the myth from a more metaversal scenario using body parts of the 17th century of a myth that was written down to 2,000 years before Christ, but also that was actually a much older story. So those layers of time is something that I'm very interested in, how we add or modify the way we look at the same myth, depending on the historic framework in which we are seeing the work at. Right.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, that was a really fantastic explanation behind your intention of the piece. Yeah, and it really justifies you combining these sculptures together in this way. I haven't. I mean, it's been years since I've actually consulted these sculptures from Rome, and it's really lovely that you've gone to the extent to really look at the symbolism and intentions behind why Zeus and Ganymede have never been put together and put them together in this way in this modern context. So thank you. That was really well explained, and I hope this sells straight away.
Well, thank you all for checking the piece. Thank you.
All right, so I think Christian, we're going to go on to you next. And,
sure, I managed to get it into the chat window. Figured that out. And if that is a more convenient way for it to be presented, people can, of course, consult it there. The title is The Lady in Gold Among the Almond Blossoms.
Super, thank you. I'll just share my screen again. This is going so far so good, I think, guys. Really good start to the critique. All right, Christian, we're going to have 5 minutes to take in notes, starting now. All right, everyone. Does anyone have any initial thoughts about this piece? It's a puzzle.
Yeah, I can start if that's fine.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I really love the piece. What really struck me at first sight is the fact that it has like a very slow unraveling speed, right? So it really takes a lot of attention to try to understand what's going on. And the first thing I saw, maybe because of the face I seem to see in the central right part and the golden parts, that one of the layers or the images that have been used and encrypted is maybe like a Klimt painting, a painting like a Art Nouveau, like a Gustav Klimt painting, and then that's mixed with something blue that I cannot really figure out what it is, but chromatically it's working like very well, and the fact that it's very intricate and detailed and kind of like a very explicit attempt to distort and encrypt the image keeps me going back to it, trying to figure out what's going on and what is it. So I would love to hear more from Christian and the others to get more from the piece. Yeah.
So that's interesting on two fronts. That you mentioned the Kiss, or at least Gustav Klimt's work, because that it is a very similar kind of palette. And I was speaking to Christian before about his other project that he's working on at the moment, and I know that Christian leaves nothing to be abstract. It's all highly thought of beforehand. So what you said about encryption, I think perhaps with the puzzle pieces that could be a metaphor for something, maybe the blockchain, maybe digital art. And maybe even these. I find these little accents, like just around here and this part around here as well, to be particularly interesting. Or maybe it's a piece that's been appropriated and used in this context, but I can't be sure. Any other thoughts, guys? I actually think.
Well, I guess. Oh, does somebody else wants to contribute?
No, sorry, Martha. Just a really quick one. Sorry, I'm being silly. I feel like sometimes if you squint at artworks like these, or if you at least zoom out, it might help form an image maybe better than if you were to look at it really straight up close. But that was it. Sorry, go on, Martha.
No, it's okay. Actually, I do have to say that this one in particular points to how tiny my screen is. I keep thinking I really want a big monitor to set up to do these critiques. But I think in the it's funny, the squinting, because that's something I always did when I was young, when my eyesight wasn't like it is now. I squinted in order to see something, in order to abstract things and see things more abstractly. And now it's different because my eyes are always blurry. But I thought I remember the title being Lady in Gold, and maybe there's more to it. Lady in Gold is what I remember. Am I missing?
So there's the last part, the Lady in Gold among almond blossoms.
Okay. Well, I thought it was interesting that the title is so figurative, and then the piece is so abstract. It's a puzzle. It's pixelated. It's a texture. It's a field. Again, I'm looking at a very small image, so I'm having a hard time really going in and going into the worlds within those also pieces. But it's funny that Clint was mentioned too, because Clint came to mind to me as well. But yeah, more than anything, it's just the very figurative title, and then the very abstract, to my eyes, piece. Yeah.
Thank you, Martha. Yeah, it's funny how there is that figurative there is that figurative title, but there is, at least from first glance, there's no indication of a lady amongst almond blossoms, or perhaps there is around the bottom. But other than that, it is interesting to see that parallel. I do feel like that's a reference.
Yeah, and the cryptic quality of it too. Maybe is another thing I would add.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and talking about cryptic, Christian, could you explain, perhaps?
The image is not, in fact, a digital image. It is a photograph of an actual analog image, and I'm hoping that I would actually mint these for the VCA Residency art show. I have a whole series of these artworks. This is an analog image that is actually produced through the affordances of the technology used to make puzzles. Now, I don't know if you know this, but of course a puzzle is made by stamping a die cut into a large-scale image. And if you're lucky, this is a very rare thing. If you're lucky, you can find two different puzzles stamped from exactly the same die cut. And as a consequence, they have compatible pieces that can be subsequently integrated with each other and interfused. So what you're looking at here is actually a hybrid interfusion of two different puzzles for two different artworks in the history of art. Among them, Gustav Klimt, The Lady in Gold, and The Almond Blossoms by Van Gogh. These are just by accident two different puzzles by two different manufacturers that have actually used the same die cut. The trick, of course, is to find two puzzles that actually have this happy accident. It's very rare. So part of the uncanniness of this work is about actually detecting or finding these two images and verifying that they have been cut from the same die cut. It requires actually assembling the puzzle pieces, or at least providing a census of them. I have to actually take an account of every single piece, or the corners at least, or something that would permit me to recognize that it's actually generated from the same die cut. Build both puzzles, and then change the pieces, interlock them with each other, produce this kind of genetic hybrid image that constitutes a fusion, an abstraction of the original images, interpenetrating them. And it's a surprise because, of course, I have no clue what it will look like until it's done. And it's just the product of this happy accident, this coincidence in the manufacture of these items. So they're the product of a lot of labor, finding the two compatible puzzles, assembling them both, and then integrating the pieces one by one into this new fusion. And it produces two different images that are slightly different. You're looking at the first of the pair. And I present them as diptychs. I frame them, glue them down. They're actually then coated in car finish. At an auto car dealer, they actually coat them down, so they're actually like paintings. They really do look like paintings when they're finished. And I think I'd like to digitize these images and use them in the in our auction, in our art show at the end of the session. I hope that you've enjoyed the work. They're labor intensive. I wish I could do these some other way. They're just works of conceptualism, and they're just experiments. It's just a fun thing to figure out how to do.
Thank you, Christian. Yeah, that's interesting how playful the process is for you, and I feel like an idiot for not realizing it was Klimt before, but like. Yeah, Basile has a question. He's curious about the orientation of the paintings. Are they both rotated?
As a matter of fact, they are. The images here are in panorama view. Normally, the Klimt would be portrait, so you can see that it's been tilted 90 degrees. Whereas the image by Van Gogh is also tilted. I think it's also in a portrait format. It looks better though here. I didn't. I think if it's in its portrait format, it becomes more obvious that there's a figurative image buried behind all of the colorful flecks of blue. And I really do want the title to be poetic and figurative in its allusions to these two paintings, without being quite so obvious. By putting it in this landscape now, it suggests a figure in recline, actually immersed in the blossoms of the leaves or the flowers. It's a little more suggestive, I think, in this format.
Yeah, I totally agree there. And because they feel like they're essentially a new artwork made by the two artists, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's kind of what I did. I mean, Danielle, for example, has done these wonderful AI interfusions of artworks by two different artists. She has asked the AI to return to her some speculative combination of two different artistic styles. And here I think I've tried to do something that would be the literalized analog version of her project. And a very admirable project, I must admit, Danielle, those works, when they hit, are really very, very good. And I admire them very much. So I would regard this as a kind of analog variation of Danielle's trick. But it's a product of a coincidence.
It's so funny you say that. I didn't get to speak, but I was going to chime in right before Harry threw it over to you. But what I was going to say before you described and explained what this was is that it seemed kind of like a mashup to me in that similar way that I do with AI. And I could see the Klimt possibly, but I didn't know what the blue was coming from. And I loved this sort of like, my kids do these huge jigsaw puzzles, and this sort of like combination of two puzzles. That's just so genius, and I really love this piece. It's mesmerizing to look at.
Well, there are other variations on my website. I've at least posted 4 variations of this kind of trick, but I have many others in various states of completion. And as I say, it's a happy accident. It's very hard to find two puzzles that will actually fit in this manner. And of course, they have to be large. These are all 1,000 pieces. If only so that there's some labor intensiveness to it, that there's some suggestion of effort that goes into it. But I think that this is a kind of reflection of something that Danielle has really perfected with her AI prompts. It just constitutes something akin to that. What would it be like to try and combine the styles of two different painters, and what would it look like? They're all experiments. I have no clue. Some are better than others. Some are more resonant with each other than others. But it's just a way of exploring a kind of coincidence that is an uncanny feature of the technology used to make these games.
Christian, I left some comments on the chat, but this is a different one that's not on the chat. Is just kind of making a connection between this and Alejandro's piece. Just the fact that in Alejandro's piece we saw the heaviness of a sculpture piece and the reference to those arts. And then turn into a very light paper-like element that is virtual, that is, and then in your case, this very tactile mental process of putting together puzzle pieces that then, that is also the merging of two things, two artworks. Anyway, just kind of seeing that relationship too between
Martha,
the two.
I think that's a very insightful thing to say about Alejandro's piece, because of course he's combining two different sculptures from two different periods and two different moments in history and European art. It's one of the things I think is really admirable with the work was there's a German sculptor, a French sculptor, and they're from different eras, and that constitutes the kind of abduction that is taking place in his own practice as he steals these more older perhaps artworks, but adapting them to the contemporary context. Much as Zeus would have, abducted somebody and re-immersed him in the world of the divine, right? Like, you've done the same sort of thing. I think Alejandro's done something again akin to a mashup much like Danielle's practice. So I think that's a very insightful thing you've noted, Martha. Cheers.
Yeah, and then both of you bringing it into this other realm and transforming it yet more. Yeah. Anyway, I just noticed that relationship between the two pieces, and I thought I'd mention it. But I left you some other things on the chat. Great piece. I love it. I love the process. I won't say any more.
No, thank you. Thank you so much, Martha. Yeah, I feel like you and Alex should make a piece together now, Christian. And yeah, it's just I actually thought of another resident from a previous cohort in Boyer's and Zarene's cohort, actually, Andrea Balestrero, with her piece First Cohort Land. I feel like this piece would benefit from being really. I mean, I don't know if you intend to get like a really high res camera, but I think something like a TIFF or so like a file format which really allowed collectors of this piece to zoom in and inspect all of the jigsaw pieces would be really immersive. It's already very, very immersive, so I mean, I suppose you wouldn't have to worry too much.
Good.
There,
I mean, the photograph is taken with as high resolution as I can, as professionally as I can. But I would say that yes, it's a PNG in its original version. On the website, it's pretty detailed. I could probably, ask a much more professional photographer to do a better job.
That's just my 2 cents, but
you are probably exactly right.
I don't know, but thank you so much, Christian. And thank you so much, Alex. That has been a lovely merging of pieces. I like this. This is great. So moving on. Andre, would you be interested in going next, or? No worries if not. By the way, we can always look at someone.
No, piece is up there. It's just not visible. I don't know how to put things on Discord from Twitter.
Sorry. Yeah. Let me just. Perfect. You know what? It's all good. I will get that up on my. You can see this now, actually. I think. Yeah. Super. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, it is zoomed in. I was talking and the microphone was off. So you don't see all that noise of Twitter. Is it possible?
Oh yeah, I can expand it.
And then what else? Oh, audio is very important. So if you guys can listen, and if you can do earphones or headphones, that would even be better. Thank you so much. And I just tweeted this in order to not provide any context. I decided I wanted to just show it without any information, except that I will say it's called halted drawing.
Thank you, Martha. Yeah, I will keep my mic on just so you guys can hear it. But yeah, 5 minutes. Martha's work starting now.
Performances that are not performances. The city throbs. Blast today. The mailman swirling quickly around the body. The neighbors shifting slowly, moving, delivering at the speed of light. Oh, yeah, negotiation is passing through complete focus traffic. Light is fast, engulfed, but it moves slow. Life is fast, but it moves slow. Inner process. Clear, get out. Get out. This is gonna end if you don't get out. Performances that are not performances. The city throbs. Blast today. The mailman swirling quickly around the body. The neighbors shifting slowly, moving, delivering at the speed of light. Oh, yeah, negotiation is passing through complete focus traffic. Light is fast, engulfed, but it moves slow. Life Performances that are not performances. The city thrums. It blasts today. Trance. The mailman swirling quickly around the body. The neighbors shifting slowly, moving in, delivering at the speed of light. Slow, negotiation is passing through. Clarity, focus, trance. Light is fast. Body moves slow. Life is fast. Body moves slow. Inner process. Clear, get out. Breathing, get out. Body. This is gonna end if you don't get out. Performances that are not performances. The city thrums. It blasts today. Trance. The mailman swirling quickly around the body. The neighbors shifting slowly, moving in, delivering at the speed of light. Slow, negotiation is passing through. Clarity, focus, trance. Move slow. Is fast. Body moves slow. Clear, get out. Breathing, get out. Body. This is gonna end if you don't get out. Performances that are not performances. The city thrums. It blasts today. Trance. The mailman swirling quickly around the body. The neighbors shifting slowly, moving in, delivering at the speed of light. Slow, negotiation is passing through. Clarity, focus, trance. Light fast. They move slow. Is fast. Body slow. Air, get out. Get body. And if you don't get out. Performances that are not performances. The city thrums. It
Okay. So I hope you guys managed to just check the chat here. Cool. Okay, everyone got the sound, I think. So does anyone have any initial thoughts for Martha? Because in fact, no, we do, because it's in the chat. So yeah, Andre says the tension with cars is mind blowing, and I have to agree there. I think this piece is very, on first impression, like it is not overwhelming. I mean, like it's got a lot of elements happening at the same time. I find that with what is presented in this video, and with the quotes as well, there's an emphasis on temporality, almost like ready-mades. Like you can have an exhibition from seemingly anything. And I think about a topic in curation called constellational curation, where any kind of engagement between people in any environment equals an exhibition. So it makes me think of curatorial theory. I could go in a bit more, but I don't want to just yet. What do you guys think?
Cars that make it the art. It's having to navigate the cars, dealing with the threat of the intrusive cars. I'm a Canadian. We play hockey in the streets, and you always have to stop to accommodate the cars. To imagine trying to make artwork on the canvas of the street while there's traffic and accommodate the traffic, I think is my favorite thing about this particular work. I think that's the most artful feature of it, in my opinion. That the cars are there and that they actually are a menace to the that you have to accommodate them in the course of the creation of the work.
So that's fascinating. That adds a geographical element to this. I would have never picked up on that, Christian. Yeah.
Yeah, the cars are the comment. They're the critics. I mean, they're constantly intruding on the activity, right? They're walking by and messing up the scene a little bit, and you have to avoid them. I mean, the fact that she can't be in the way, or if she tries, is going to put herself at some threat. There's that element of the performance characteristic of performance art in which the artist has to put themselves at least at some risk in the act of performance, and here it's made explicit with the traffic, standing in perhaps for the audiences that traverse a work of art, they'll bear witness to it, kind of carry them off of it, and the I suppose the kind of peril that they metaphorically impose upon you.
Thank you. Yeah, and now that you mention that, Christian, with those details, like with the cars themselves, I'm wondering why this is being filmed from this view, and rather than from directly at Martha on the ground. And I'm interested. I am interested about this use of frog tape on the pavement, and I suppose I agree with you. I think it relates to the cars interrupting, cars being the critics, but this is almost like an isolated space where Martha can hold time. But yeah. Does anyone have any comments? I think we'll pass on to Martha in a minute or so.
Hi, it's Danielle. One thing I found interesting was that she creates these shapes, and only one of the three is inhabited by, the dancer, and sort of those two empty shapes that you have there at the end that are created but never inhabited are interesting to me. Sort of that absence. Not sure. I mean, I find myself kind of, wondering. Like what are those shapes meant to signify, and kind of like, are they placeholders for other bodies that we don't see, other figures or something? Anyway, I'm kind of rambling, but I just found that interesting.
No, thank you, Danielle. That's a very good observation. I think of constellations in the sky, actually. I think there has to be some relevance there, surely. All right,
I'm going to ramble a little bit as a poet by noting too that the meaningfulness of the partial asemic letters that are
right
into the scene. Yeah. Right, there's always a message there. I don't know what the abbreviation is or what the intended one is, but they seem to be fragments of a word like calm, like traffic calming, maybe. I don't know. But I would like to know what the original wording was that provided some sort of semiotic signal to the traffic or the pedestrians, because it seems to me that that's also playing into the meaningfulness. It's a register that bears a little bit of semantic freight, and the poet in me is more curious, I guess, about the bits of lettering. In addition to the shapes, it may have some bearing upon the shapes, I guess, in response to Danielle's comment. Probably there's a way to relate the visual image with the textual overtone at the bottom.
Right, yeah, spot on. And I'm interested now about these extra shapes at the side.
We can't forget about the shadows too, because they're right. The shadow that's being projected onto the road looks like it's a tram car probably. So that you were asking about where it's positioned. It seems to me that there must be some intervening traffic that is off screen. The shadows are also playing into the construction, the appearance of this video.
Yeah, that was actually something I wanted to comment about, that you've got this writing on the pavement, and then you've got the shadows also making some shapes and helping the composition. Then there is a taping. And I think it's really cool that it's a video, so you get a deeper sense of this layering going on, because that wouldn't be the case if it was a still image. And then you've got even electricity cables on top of that. So there is a very interesting layering process going on there. Going back to what Danielle said, I was also wondering what's the role, because I get like the whole performative approach was already brought in by the person who I assume is Martha, taping the shapes. But then the actual dancing piece is very mild, very, very shy, and very modest. And I was wondering whether in other pieces these go further and there is more exploration of this dancing choreography approach to the piece, or I would love to hear more about that, and what's the link or the interaction between the shapes and the dancer and everything. So it's really interesting.
Thank you. And I think we have one more comment from Taimaz. They love the second shape that was forming from the shadow, but wants to know if Martha always knows the shape that she wants to draw, and if there's a specific shape, or if they're always shaped from the shadows. I think we shouldn't say any more. I think we should go over to Martha, so we can fully understand.
Oh my gosh, I love all these comments. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
And you all asked so many questions, and I kind of want to address all of them. But the last one that you just read, it was asking, and who was it from? The very last comment, Harry?
It was from Taimaz, I think. Yeah.
Timax. Okay. And Timax said, was wondering if I preconceived the shapes, if I know them ahead of time. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. Okay. Well, I will try to. So yes. Thank you so much for the feedback, for observing and listening, and sharing. The project, it does start with the shadows. Flickering. It is about temporality, and it is very important that it is a moving drawing. That it is a dialogue with the lines that are existing on the asphalt and that are transforming throughout the day. And of course, that starts with light and with how light interacts with things that are part of the city. And so then that's how I start. And no, it is not preconceived, completely impromptu, is completely created in the moment. And the city itself and its own rhythm is part of the composition, the ever-evolving composition. So in this particular case, the cars it actually ended up being a busy day. I tend to respond to that and move out of the way, kind of like what Christian was saying. My collaborator, the dancer, was kind of entranced in the grieving of her cat, and also very into something we had discussed the last time we did this. And she was kind of oblivious to the city. And so I found myself protecting her from the traffic. So my shapes ended up being kind of flat, because they do actually, that answers another question. They normally become much more, they expand, and they're kind of, I play with volume and the perception of volume, so that you're kind of entering this space that is, I create these shapes that are maybe kind of, maybe I'm getting into something else, but yeah, they're. If you see some of my other pieces, you will see that they imply more spatial possibilities, and so I'm looking through the questions too that were asked. Shapes never inhabited, but maybe I will say that I started. This is maybe right now I'll do a little introduction about the project, and then I'll address some other things. This is the last one of a series of
I think we're losing you a little bit, Martha.
apartment. About can you hear me now? Maybe can you stop playing
Yes.
the video taking up a lot of can you hear me now? Yeah, I think the video is using a lot. Maybe stop it. Can you stop it? Yeah, thank you. Yeah. You lost me? Okay, well, audio was so broken up, and even the video was broken up, but that's okay. So yeah, the plan view is something that I've been exploring a lot, and the sectional view referencing architectural drawings. I also did a lot of investigations about the kind of documentation or drawing from above, that kind of more abstract view versus the experiential view. And I did a lot of experiments with that, with my work and with my students' work in a lot of different scales and ways. So that references that as well. But this series is they're drawings from the balcony of my apartment, and it happened during quarantine. And they're called asphalt drawings, and they are what this piece illuminated for me, or actually not that, it's actually a book that I stumbled upon here in my studio called Asphalt Nation. And the subtitle of the book is how the automobile took over America and how we can take it back. And I realized that for a really long time, I've been actually photographing and documenting the ground plane beneath us, just finding the qualities of it. And with these drawings, I am the little elevator pitch that Christian was encouraging me the other day that I've been doing is these are drawings that are performances and installations. And as that, they're vehicles for connection. And in there, vehicles is kind of a play of words because it's a way of reclaiming our ground plane. And so I think this piece really exemplified that with the fact that traffic was, this was in an alley, and it was a busy day, and it was kind of scary. I thought we were not going to be able to continue, and I wanted to actually stop because it was kind of dangerous. But what happened is that neighbors that were trying to drive by called the police, and the project was stopped. I had also told my friend, you got to get up, Claire, you got to get up, because I knew that if she didn't get up, this was going to get stopped. But what was interesting is they didn't call because they were upset that there was an artist performance out there. They called because they thought that she was injured. They saw this taped on the ground and this person on the ground. So that was also kind of an interesting thing. But we did continue on and went to another space, and completely indoors. We just wanted to continue with our project, and we did it completely indoors, and we were able to explore something different, which was another question that somebody asked. In this case, we weren't interacting with the city, so we got to focus on the interaction between the two of us. It was a dialogue too between the dancer and myself. I drew to her movements, and she moved to my drawing. So there was that going on. And then Christian and other people asked about the words that were there. Since this is a series of drawings, they started initially by myself. Then, of course, neighbors come by and people join in, and they also participate in the drawing. There's other drawings where they just take a life of their own, and people play and bring elements to it, and it's created in that way. It really is a performance that is not a performance. It is a life moving and changing. And at a certain point, I invited a dancer, added another element to it, another element of interaction, of engagement with the city, and and at one point, because it was also when the Black Lives Matters demonstrations were going on during the pandemic, I ended up doing a piece about that. And then those letters that you were wondering what they were is a palimpsest of that. That's the thing that remains from one of the other drawings, because they, in a way, a lot of my drawings are sketches for other drawings, and they develop and overlaid over themselves, and they get reconstructed. And I this is an analogy also to life. In a way, I may also reference to I am the drawing. The drawing is my process. I'm missing another piece there right now. It's escaping my mind. But did I address all the questions that were asked? Think so. Yeah.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So I didn't realize at first glance how complex this work is, but it really is. I have to say, Martha, the first thing that struck me about it was just how effective the sound design seemed to be. I think that gave it a layer of immersion, like with your quotes, like performances that are not performances, and I think that really feeds into your sense of like ready-made artworks and artworks that aren't artworks, and I think it's very effective at what it's set out to achieve. I do want to move on to our next artist, but thank you, Martha, and thank you everyone for contributing your comments on this one. It's really there was a lot of scope with that piece, so thank you.
I love the feedback. Thank you so much.
So I think does anyone want to go next? I think we might have time for one more. But don't worry, because we will have another critique coming up. So you'll be put right to the top of the waiting list, so to speak. If not, no worries. I can pick if that's better. Andre, do you fancy going up next, or?
Hey, me?
I mean, if you want, it's totally fine.
Yes, I could be. I have a long form narrative work. Let me see what it is. This is minted in FH hash. Let me paste the link in the chat. It's just the description here, because I want to you see first the work. Let me see. It is. And I will send you Aria the full link.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got it on there. You guys can see this. Oh wait, no. I need to share my screen. Okay. All right. So I think if that's good, Andre, we should have 5 minutes to take notes, starting now. Okay, guys, do we have any initial thoughts for Andre? Because I love this kind of abstracty. It's just so good. If not, happy to chip in here. So the first question I had when I looked at it was just simply what is it that we're looking at? I see an image constructed of opposites, kind of opposite textures, opposite opacities and densities of shapes superimposed on each other, different frame rates as well with this particular piece. I know that Andre posted a link to the FX Hash project, but I think for this, just focus on this one. But I love. There seems to be elements of repeat patterns, some which are free flowing and random. Others seem to be very structured. I also really dig this kind of color system that's going on purely from an aesthetic point of view. It reminds me of a map of some kind, like a train, like a subway map with these different angles here. But I have to say, this abstract work it leaves me wanting more and wanting to know more. But yeah, like a biocomputer circuit, Helia. Thank you. And they are organic as opposed to mechanic forms.
I've gone to the FX Hash site to actually watch it being built and tried different variations. It seems to me that it's actually 3 different algorithms that are layered on top of each other. 3 completely different ways to generate an image. One of which provides the background, a series of flow forms that repeat a single shape, followed by a bunch of straight lines that actually map out according to some automatistic algorithm. And he does it in 2 different orientations. They're just layered onto each other to produce this kind of biological computational circuit, I think. There's a lot of variety in the results from the algorithm, even though it's evident, I think, that the 3 layers to it are probably pretty simple mathematically, generative works. He's provided some, hints. It's derived from another piece of software he designed earlier, and that I think there's this kind of science fiction overtone to it. But the primary value that the thing is supposed to evoke is something akin to growth. I know, to me, it feels to me that there's something sporadic or fungal about it, right? That it has this weird interfusion of kind of hybrid biological and computational growth that is associated with it. It's kind of cyborg, and like a film or a slime or something like that.
Yeah, totally, Christian. It does have that sci-fi element. I think it particularly comes through from that second layer, just kind of like almost like alien-esque forms mutating like that.
Well, certainly, the title of it, creche, is the Spanish word for growth, and it grows. So that seems to be the primary motif, the metaphor for it. It's an expression of growth.
Thank you. I didn't know that. That is really good to know. Yeah, interesting.
Well, I guess I'll say that it at one point it has the quality of kind of like muscle, maybe things moving through the body, and then it takes me back. And this is just me, like, making a relationship, maybe tying it back to my work. That one of the things that I like observing a lot is sped up footage or imagery or even drawings that are created with GPS and other things that are tracking the way traffic and people move through space and in time, and that this piece has that kind of quality of like systems of the body, like the human body or a city body. They're beautiful lines, beautiful colors put together. Just a really wonderful combination of scales and a thread-like elements that flow. Yeah.
Thank you, Martha. Yeah. When you mentioned that, these kind of like these almost human forms, I thought of another previous VCA artist, Icaro Cavalcante, if I've pronounced their name right. Yeah, Boyer and Zarina will certainly know. It's that kind of, it has that kind of futuresque aesthetic to it. These kind of forms, they're very, as Christian would say, like a sci-fi element to them. But I don't
like
there we go. Perfect word for it. Perfect word. Yeah, very on brand. But yeah, I don't want to speculate too much longer. I think Andre, could you explain a bit more? It's a great project, by the way. Really had fun.
Yeah, thanks very much. So grateful for your feedback. Well, this project is a project that was previously, how Christian said before, is the exploration of another algorithm published in the same platform. And this one, I wanted to explore more about what else I could do with this algorithm, and I don't know, trying to think about metaphor. The other project, this is a kind of a metaphor of the other project, and I try to play with that word, the metaphor, what the metaphor means when I work, because how you said, there's so abstract forms that I only think to connect with the forms is the metaphor, to explain the forms, or to explain the outputs to the people is some kind of metaphors. I don't know that it makes sense, but yeah, I don't know how long to explain that about this project, but well, you can read more in the description, maybe here. I don't know. Thank you.
No, thank you. Yeah, that metaphor of growth is conveyed in like seemingly like a dozen ways. So I think there's only a certain amount of times that you can explain it. But I do want to point out. I'll just share my screen again. I find this fascinating now that we're looking at the components that go into this. Just sort of the wording of these items, like the moment, growth, duration. Oh yeah, as there it is, Christine Rizo. Shape of the metaphor, pigmentary composition of the metaphor. I see this as like just a really playful generative piece. I have to admit it's one of the nicest generative pieces I've come across in a while. So I just find it's a hard thing to strike, actually. A generative piece that really kind of gets you thinking and focusing on these components. And now that we're talking about Creche, if I have pronounced it right, we really do get this impression of growth and mutation and changing of forms. So I think this is effective in what it's trying to achieve. And it's great that it's live already, honestly. I'm going to open the marketplace after this, to be honest.
But the floor is 20 TES there, buddy. 20 TES. That's all it costs to get a cheap one.
I'd also love to chime in quickly. I really appreciate how diverse the outputs are, just scrolling through the different iterations, the colors and the forms. Sometimes with generative art, like especially in large editions, things can look kind of samey. And I feel like these are so different, although you can obviously tell they're part of a cohesive project. So really, really well done on that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I also want to add that I think it's super visually compelling, but I also find the output being very daunting or almost scary. I think that's because the actual fact of we think of growth as a phenomenon that only applies to living creatures and beings, and in this case, something like very technological, but still it resembles, as Christian and others were saying before, something alive like mushrooms or some sort of plants or something growing. And the fact that it's not real, but it's still like sci-fi and technological makes it like very daunting and out of our control. And I think that's also a nice metaphor of how many people feel about AI and the speed at which technology is progressing. So I think it's both like aesthetically and also conceptually like very, very interesting. I love the piece. Yeah.
I think that what contributes to that too is the palette. The color combinations are deliberately chosen to evoke that artificiality. They're not kind of organically generated palettes. It seems they're certainly kind of 1990s.
Totally.
Right. What messy typography, I guess. They feel rhizomatic, though. I think it's a contrast between two different algorithms. One is they're palimpsests, two superimposed upon the other. One with the two-dimensional shape that's smeared around, followed by this flow field that's all made of lines, and they really feel fibril, or it's a hybrid between something like a electronic and biological for sure.
Yeah, and Alejandro, you mentioned the kind of like small things, small growing things, and I wanted to mention again the very large visualizations of things like planes flying over the world. I'm thinking of two projects. One called Cop Spotting, which is tracking taxis in San Francisco, and then Amsterdam real time. Also a map over there, and that which references those lines that Christian was just talking about. That's kind of buildup of lines of movement. To me, that's what it recalls, and I love those documents. They're so beautiful because, again, I'm interested in cycles of time. So I think this project captures a little bit of that in a very different way, in something constructed.
Yeah, that's also, again, an insightful thing to note, because all my emphasis here has been on the kind of microscopic or microbial character of the work, that it's actually at a very small scale. But Martha's also suggested that there's something very large scale about them, that they might be kind of satellite images of traffic patterns or something bigger. I think that's something to take into account for sure. That it has this very interesting contrast between scales. Yeah, that's smart.
What I find interesting is that you've got these different perceptions of this same artwork. One, as you say, Christian, very microscopic. The other one much broader, and it's really, maybe there's a collaboration in there between Martha and Andre. I can dream.
Yeah.
In Australia, Aboriginal art, the stipple paintings have the same weird microcosmic and macrocosmic scales simultaneously evoked on the canvas. It's one of the features that makes these works strange here in my adopted country. It's quite amazing. They look like things you might see under a microscope, but they also look like something you might see it through a telescope.
Yeah, exactly. So I think before we could talk about this forever, but I'm just going to round up today's critique. Thank you, everyone. If you haven't taken part, I know Disc Collective, Helio, and Timaz, don't worry, you guys are right at the top of the next one. which is very soon as well. I hope you guys have a lovely rest of day. Christian, get some sleep, please. And
Thanks, gang.
yeah, see you at the next one, guys. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers, everyone. You've been fun.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Thank you, Boya. Thank you. Bye.